Hey, if you like the sound of this, or perhaps you like the sound of this, or maybe this. Then you have to watch this video because I really want to recommend Abel Mendoza Productions Worship Essentials, and it's really awesome. Hey, I'm Sandra from Inspire Keyboardist, and some of you who follow me on my email list or on social media will see that I've actually been playing around with MainStage. I've been lugging around my really cool MIDI controller and my laptop, and I've received tons of feedback from people who say, hey, your sound is amazing, what was your secret? And I'd like to share that with you. I've actually mostly been using Abel Mendoza Productions Worship Essentials. So this video is a quick run through of all my favorite sounds and effects, and I won't go into the details of how to set it up and stuff. So I do have a video that I'd like to link to below. Do check that video out if you want to find out about the nitty-gritties. So Worship Essentials is awesome because Abel has put together all the sounds that people typically need to use in modern day worship songs. So I would like to very quickly go through all the favorite sounds that I have. So there are 16 sounds or 16 patches that comes with the Worship Essentials regular package, and that costs $27. So if you think about it, each sound is really very affordable and you get to keep it for life. It's a one-time payment, so I think it's really worth it. So there are two other kinds of Worship Essentials available. There is the Worship Essentials Regular, that is the one that's $27 and with 16 different patches or sounds. There's also the Worship Essentials Plus. Now this one comes with more effects, and you do need other kinds of software to make the sound possible, which I don't have, so I can't do the review right now. So when I upgrade myself, I'm gonna do another video again. And then there's also Worship Essentials Lite, which is a very simple version. It's got 3 of the patches that are already available in the Worship Essentials regular bundle called Worship Essentials 1.2, but I actually would recommend that you get the regular bundle, Worship Essentials 1.2. Worship Essentials Lite costs $15, and you get 3 patches with very simple kinds of parameters that you can set. But if you just pay a little bit more, you get a whole lot more sounds, 16 patches, and you get this number of parameters that you can tweak around, which I find very important because each knob and fader really produces so much more effects. So if you're on the fence and you're not very tech savvy, but you still want to try to create a fuller and more exciting worship sound, then I will definitely recommend the Worship Essentials 1.2, which is $27, not that much more expensive as well. So I'm gonna jump right into what some of my favorite sounds are. So you can, here's like an overview of what the sounds look like, the way they're described and stuff. You'll see that there are some that have a couple of instruments stacked on top of another. A quick way is to see how many different instruments are lighting up at the bottom here. You can have up to 5 instruments that sound at any time, or if you don't want any sound, then you can mute those layers and you can only have just a piano. I love the stacked sounds. Like, I honestly think those are lifesavers, because when you stack sounds, you can easily mute and unmute sounds that are less distracting than changing a patch altogether. When you change a patch, parameters might change along. So I find that very distracting. But when you just slide the knobs and faders up and down, it really makes the whole worship experience very seamless. So there are a couple of sounds that are on its own, like this one pretty much just has one channel, one layer of instrument, and those work very well if you know you only need one. But a lot of these sounds are also like the altar call pad or worship pad. They are embedded in some of the stacked patches. And I really would like to recommend checking out the stacked patches. So I'm just gonna start to demonstrate to you the very first patch right here, which is piano, pad, and lead. So the default sound is clearly just piano and pad. And what I recommend you to do is to play around with each layer, just to listen to each layer on its own. So this is the piano on its own. And that's the pad. And if you were to just check out, there are two pads. The second pad is like a little bit lower. So if you use just one of these two pads, it's not as full as if you use both of them together like this, which really creates a very warm worship atmosphere to start with. And then we've got synth layers as well. I'm just gonna isolate this. And the lead layer. So you can see how easily we can transform from like a slow worshipful song into maybe the song builds up into something more with more synths, and you can easily do that. So I'm just gonna top up that. Right? So let's say the song builds up and then you want to start to sneak in the synth and the lead patches, and you start to hear that more modern dance-like kind of sound, but you don't necessarily have to make them sound dancey. Right? And you can even sneak it up so the volumes go louder and louder. And you can even like remove the piano layer altogether so that it doesn't sound as classical. And I love that you can also adjust the mod wheel so that you could also have like Don't you just love it? It's like you can transform character within the same patch just by sliding around the knobs and faders. So love this patch, of course. Now the next one's the pad sound is mostly replaced by strings, so it creates the very typical worshipful atmosphere that goes. So of course there are two different kinds of string sounds, and the pad and the piano. So here's the sound when you have maxed out pads and strings but with no piano. Or if you just want strings, you can just mute the pad altogether. Okay, now the next patch. That worship sound. Love this with all my heart. I pretty much just used this patch for the entire worship set sometime last week. So here's how it sounds. It has that worship sound, right? The one that you keep hearing in like Hillsong Young and Free and so many more. So I love it. The default setting is wonderful. But if I were to isolate some sounds, you do get this amazing synth that creates most of the sound that we are hearing right now, right? But you could also increase the arps, which create this really cool and of course you can change the tempo of that arp sound by using the tap tempo, which I've assigned to a particular pad that I can press on. And if you don't want that, just slide the Arpeggiator faders down so that we don't hear it anymore. Actually, there are two kinds of arps, so you can also get this one. Love it. Just love the sound. It's just so, it's so versatile. You could actually just create different effects And I otherwise love this default sound. Or if you don't need the synth sound at first, you can just see what I mean? You could just let it be the normal, quiet, worshipful sound. And when you need the synths to come in, you could sneak it up. So just playing around with different sound capabilities there. And I was also playing around with Shimmer parameter, which is awesome. Love the Shimmer because I was just trying to play like Ever Be, and I noticed that the first chorus comes in with this really cool airy shimmery pad, and it's really easy to achieve that if you could just mute all the other layers and you've got pretty much the pads only. And so what you do is lower the modulation wheel, and here's the pads just on its own, no shimmer, and just listen to the difference. No shimmer with shimmer. Wow. It's really got this distancy effect, which is so cool. So just love all these really cool parameters that you could also play with, like delays, reverbs, and compressors. So compressor usually creates this really cool kind of like smashed piano sound. So if I have no compressor at the moment, it's right, normal piano. And if I turn on my compressor, cuts through quite strongly, and it's got this really strong attack. And we could play around with the piano reverb, we could play around with the delay. So if you want a really clean sound, you can turn all these parameters down. Cool kind of modern effect. So then we've got some isolated patches on its own, like the alto call pad. Just nice and warm. We've got that worship pad, the worship pad. Nice and warm. We've got the worship pad too. Nice and warm. We've got the cloudy EP end pad, which EP is just such a good alternative to piano sound. So you could always just try. I love the way the EP sounds very bell-like on the high registers, while on the lower part it does get a little bit muffled. So very nice. Just love this. It's a very easy way to transit into like a non-typical piano sound if you ever get tired of the piano sound, which I do. Okay, and then we get into piano and warm pad, which is the typical combination between piano and by having piano and pad together. But if I were to use the piano and one pad, I would go easily to like the first piano pad and lead patch, or any of those stacked sounds, because you could achieve that already using those stacked sounds, right? Pancake and Pie, love the name and also just the way it sounds. So this really reminds me of the That Worship sound patch, because it's also very synth-like, but it doesn't have the arpeggios, and it also has EP. So if I were to just want an EP sound, I could just mute all the rest. Of course, the EP sound in this case sounds very distanced, and I think cloudy EP might work better if you want the EP to come forth as the front layer of a sound. So Pancake and Pie, I love it with all my heart. I love the fact that it swells very nicely as well. So right, very nice. Love the swells. Okay, I'm gonna move on to aggressive pad. Wow. If you were just listening to the way it faded, it's got this really cool distancy echoey effect. Very nice reverbs there. So we've got aggressive pad, we've got polytrans lead, which is already part of the sounds within some of the stacks. So I would probably not use this patch on its own because I like things that are stacked. We've got Sweet Roads, like an EP, but very nice, very sweet. Sweet Roads 2. Too. We've got sweet shimmery organ, just to throw in the organ for good measure, I guess, but the organs are really awesome for creating this nice thick like thickness in the song, right? So if you ever want to sneak that layer in, you can start soft with like I love how the sound pans from the right to left. So we've got, what else? Gladiator, which is really cool. It's just this sweepy effect, which is great for sneaking in the back layers, but it's also a very thick sound, so you could also use it as a form of a pad, but it's a single layer only, so you can't play multiple notes. It will only sound one note. So what else? We've got the intimate piano, which kind of sums up the entire concert. It's very interesting because it's got this plucky sound. If I were to mute the piano, you would hear, right? So if I put on both. So that sums it. Worship Essentials 1.2. And Abel actually updates these concerts, and whenever he does, if you've bought the patch already, he emails everybody to say, hey, here's a free download to update it. And yeah, I would really recommend it. You've heard it for yourself. The best thing is you could actually just use this concert in most worship sets. I don't actually change around to different concerts because it's got everything I need. And honestly, I just pretty much stick around to some of the layered patches. So I really recommend it if you are feeling like you need some fresh sounds for your worship MainStage concerts, if you feel like you want to try something new, you don't want to spend too much money, and you really want to just get an all-in-one kind of a package, this is the concert to buy. Okay, so if you want to get it, you can just click the link below. I've linked it to Abel Mendoza Productions link or that worship sound, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.